My name's GuyKesTV, and I've been a pro mountain bike tester for nearly 25 years. And today I'm very lucky to have a full GuyKesTV exclusive on the brand new Pace RC295. So I've been live rider reviewing today with Adrian Carter, the designer at Pace, and kind of the main guy behind the brand since 1987. Runs it with his wife Kathy and their two daughters, Sophie and Amy. But I've also been riding and tuning it around Stainburn and Gisborne forests. So what are we talking about with the RC295? Bike's been in development for 3 years. It's the first new Pace suspension bike for 10 years, and it's a full carbon bike. So that's a first for Pace. Although, you know, they did some pioneering work with carbon suspension forks and carbon elements on bike, you know, back in the early 90s. So it's, you know, they're not strangers to carbon, but it's the first time they've done a full bike in carbon. And it's a unidirectional weave with a gloss lacquer over the top. They did try a matte lacquer on one of the prototypes, but the gloss lacquer just cleans up a lot more easier. And then you've got these matte khaki graphics underneath. Comes in medium, large and extra large, 135mm travel, and then either 150mm fork, which is what it's running today, or 140mm travel fork at the front. 29er wheels, both ends today, but you can also move the eccentric shock eyelet up top there, drop it a little bit lower, and run it with a 27.5 rear wheel up to a 2.8. So if you want to run a mullet bike, but even with these, you know, big 2.4-inch tyres in here, 61mm wide, there's some decent mudroom. A bit of collecting around that shelf there, you can see when it's really, really clarty, but there's nothing up here for it to clog with. And this free floater suspension system, and this is kind of the heart of the design, this long lower linkage here, and this upper rocker linkage, and that means the shock is being compressed from underneath slowly, and then this top linkage comes around a lot quicker. That means Adrian's really been able to tailor the shock rate changes and the leverages, and the whole bike feels impeccably controlled. I mean, like I say in the live ride review, it's almost too controlled. Actually, you know, it's so polished, it takes a while to kind of get into and work out exactly what's happening. But basically, there's very little anti-squat in the bike, but because of the way the shock works, because of the way the spring rate works, it actually feels really stiff and stable under pedaling. So, but there's no kickback, there's no sort of pedal connection, you know, knocking you all over the place like a bike with more chain growth. So it's just really, really stable, and it means that Adrian can get away with the lightest possible custom damper tune in this RockShox Deluxe shock. It's actually running an L3. Normally they just go down to low, but they actually do an even lighter L1, 2 and 3 tune on the RockShox shocks if you specifically ask for it, and that's what this bike is based around for maximum sensitivity. So once it does start moving, that traction and connection is absolutely impeccable. As you can see, massive seat stays and chain stays on the back here. There's a brace on the far side to keep it fully, you know, all locked together. It's extra large diameter pivots, 17mm pivot axles through there. And the linkage pieces are actually bolted top and bottom, so they physically clamp the shock in place for a super stiff connection. Slightly asymmetric, offset to the non-drive side. I mean, I'm going to put my hand on my heart here. They're not the prettiest things. I mean, there's a lot of machining on the inside, but they've got a very flat face on the outside, and you know, it's nice to have the torque settings on those pivot caps there, but they look a bit, you know, they look a bit generic and a bit off the shelf. But, you know, I've chatted to Adrian about it, and that's the way he wanted it to look. He did try it with, obviously, you know, you can have the machining on the inside or the outside, but he decided to have it on the inside. So that's his choice, and it certainly doesn't get in the way of the fact that this is a super efficient, very, very stiff linkage setup that does remarkable things with that shock. I mean, check out the live ride review, but the way this shock feels is absolutely stellar. 3 settings for your locked, pedal, or fully open, and you've got obviously reband adjustment there as well, and it comes with the rapid return system, so it's naturally supple off the bottom. But this bike, I have to say, is probably the most flattering suspension setup I've used a deluxe shock in, and that's saying something, because obviously, you know, they're a very popular shock. And going, you know, while we're on the subject of suspension, all the rolling chassis and complete bikes come with RockShox Pike Ultimate up front, and that is, again, absolute benchmark for trail control in my eyes. This Charger 2.1 damper is just so controlled, reasonably lightweight, 35mm leg chassis is stiff, it's predictable, it's communicative. So you've got a really, really controlled front end without the extra weight of a 36 or, you know, a Lyric in there, you know, and that just, and the whole dynamic, the way the bike works together from a suspension point of view, dynamically, is just so polished. Like I say, it's almost too good. It's almost kind of kills the character of the bike. It does everything so well. But then, so you've just got to get, you know, the character comes from this Pace heritage and features like this, you know, rock guards, clip-on protection there on the down tube. If you look under here, you've got heavy-duty pipes protecting the cable and the brake hose. It's a threaded bottom bracket axle with ISCG mounts in there if you need it. And just look at, you know, the size of these chainstays. This is a seriously stiff bike. Big boxy front section, really nicely sealed internal cable routing. This is a properly practical, tough bike. And, you know, it comes with little features like this Hope seat clamp on there as well. So the bike's available in an XT build, a GX Eagle build, which is what I've got here, or as a rolling chassis with a range of Hope wheels and that fork and some other bits thrown in, or as a frame only. But whatever price point you go for, really, really keenly priced for what is, you know, quite a rare limited edition bike that people are, you know, going to go out of their way to look out for and pay that little bit extra for, just because of that heritage and that connection. As soon as I started talking about this bike on the internet, you know, and the fact I was going to get it, people like, oh, when are you testing it? Oh, I really want to see it. When are you getting the Pace RC295? Even when I've been testing other bikes, this is the bike that keeps cropping up time and time again as the one that people want me to talk about. You know, there is that amazing Pace heritage there. You know, you got your little mint sauce details from MB UK back in the day. You know, sit on my Pace and tell me that you love me. Just little slogans like that have been part of sort of UK mountain biking culture for literally decades. Moving up to the top here, control area, you've got Pace's own 32mm reach stem. So that's literally as short as you can go with a stem with a 35mm bar before that bar actually contacts the steerer. You've got Hope headset, you've got 800mm wide Renthal bars, you've got DMR Death Grip grips. So just all good, really solid, durable trail componentry in just the right size to make the most of what is properly radical geometry, which is something I've not even touched on yet, but I think it's about time I talk you through the numbers. Because even with a 140mm fork in, you're running a 64.5 degree head angle. With this 150 in, you're running a 64-degree head angle. If you dropped the eccentric chip in the top of the shock, you'd be probably running about a 63.5 degree head angle. If you then put a mullet back wheel in with a smaller tyre, you're probably running like a 63-degree head angle. And that's insane. That's proper downhill stuff. 484mm reach on this large. And even in the tallest possible configuration that you can go with, it's a sub 330mm bottom bracket height. And, you know, that's just going to get lower and lower. So it comes as standard with 165mm cranks just to get the ground clearance on there. And a 76-degree seat angle as the baseline. But again, you know, obviously depending what fork and shock setting you go for, that's going to move either way between there. But properly steep for that aggressive, forward-weighted, in the bike, commanding position on the bike. And 435mm chainstay length. So you've got this short, really tight back end, this totally sorted suspension system in the centre, and then this long maximum control front end. You know, it actually took me a while to properly get into this bike, just because I was trying to work out exactly what it was doing. It's almost too polished. It's almost too good if you're looking for, you know, something really characterful. But turns out what it was doing was just giving me so much time to react to stuff and just responding to everything in such a controlled and concise manner. It was just doing everything brilliantly. A remarkably good price as well, considering it's a small manufacturer, because they're direct to customers. And despite the fact the bike feels so stiff and composed, it's still a really competitive weight. I mean, this large frame with shock and all the trimmings, 3 kilos. So you could build this up into a properly light bike. You could probably get this down to, you know, numbers starting with a 12 pretty easily with some lightweight carbon wheels in there. The only thing I would say is Pace sent it to me with Hope Fortus 30 wheels. Sorry, Hope, but dear Lord, 2.5 kilos, no. And I've actually had a word with Adrian and Sophie about this, and they're not going to put the 30s on the complete bike builds now. They're going to go with the Fortis 26, which is still a weighty wheel set. I mean, having ridden with Santa Cruz reserves in it, that's when it really feels great dynamically. And if you went even lighter, you'd get even more of a pop and perk out of it. Personally, I go for something a lot lighter in terms of wheel set and with a quicker reacting free hub, because the nice thing about this, because it's got such a sort of flat profile in terms of how the suspension moves, there's not much kickback. You could get away with a really fast reacting wheel set. It's never going to get in the way by creating tug back through the pedals. So I'd maybe go for a different, 4-letter English wheel producer that starts with an H if it was my choice. But obviously, again, like there's a massive amount of interest and loyalty in pace, so there is in hope. And in terms of durability, they're a great match for the bike. But at the end of the day, if you've been one of the many people who are asking me about this bike, this pace has absolutely been worth waiting for. Dynamically, structurally, kinematically from a suspension point of view. Way to go, pace. Obviously there's a lot hanging on this bike, but you've made a very, very strong hook that is going to engage with a lot of people. So, thanks for your time watching. Massive thanks to my Patreon supporters who've basically paid for my time to film this edit with Adrian today and to go out testing with the bike. Their names will be scrolling up here. If you could consider joining them, that would be fantastic. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I've been GuyKesTV. This has been GuyKesTV. And that has been the absolutely outstanding, all-round, maximum control, radical geometry, yet still surprisingly lightweight RC295.